For joining us on this. I don't know something about you, but certainly in the Northwest, it's a very wet and windy Wednesday morning. So we're cozying up with brews here, coffee, and Ruth has tea. I'm on brand, and so is Ruth with an R. Yeah, I really appreciate you joining this morning's session. I hope you're going to get a lot of value from it. I'm certainly really quite excited about it as we talk about recruitment transformation within the NHS. I'm so glad that so many of you can join us this morning. Quick check that you can see and hear us okay before we get started. If you could just pop a little message in the chat, that would be great. And a couple of things. Firstly, you will see on the right-hand side of the chat window, on the right-hand side of the screen, a little poll. We'd love your responses to a few of the questions there in terms of what are the greatest challenges that you're facing right now. Oh, everybody can see and hear us, Ruth. We're all right. This is good. And secondly, as we go through, please do feel free to post any questions you might have. We would love this to be a bit more of an interactive session, if you like. If you've got anything that's on your mind, or how did you approach this problem, or how did you overcome this, then please do ask questions. We'd be only too happy to help with that. So I'm Giles. I run these webinars pretty regularly. I know a lot of you will probably be new to these sessions. But we will be running quite a lot more NHS related webinars. So if you want to join in on those, then we'd be delighted. And also if you have people that you think would be a benefit or interested in it, then again, please do feel free to share in the chat. A little bit further up now, there are some links both to connect with Ruth and I, and also to follow Jobtrain, where you'll be notified of any future webinars, bits of content, that kind of stuff. We're all about sharing value, information, insight, knowledge, all those types of things. So without any further ado, I'd love to introduce you to Ruth, who's the Assistant Director of Talent Acquisition and Recruitment at NHS Blood and Transplant. Ruth, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thanks. Very, very happy to be here.
So for everybody's benefit, do you want to tell them a little bit about you and your background, and also a little bit more about NHS Blood and Transplant, and perhaps what drew you to the role as well?
Yeah, of course. There's always a story, Giles. So thanks for having me. Nice to meet you all. My name's Ruth, as Giles said. I've worked in-house recruitment purely for over 20 years. And I've always worked, until I came to NHSBT, I've always worked in the private sector and in the commercial world. So I've worked across multiple different industries, industry types. I've worked for in large retail organisations, FTSE 100 retail organisation, one of the big four supermarkets. I've worked for a global Fortune 500 chemicals organisation as a global head of talent acquisition, led teams across the world in all sorts of different specialisms, worked on high volume roles right the way through to technical roles, executive roles, and almost everything really. I joined NHS Blood and Transplant in January last year, so January 2022. And NHSBT, we're an amazing organisation, and the whole reason we exist is to save and improve lives. And there's not much better purpose, I don't think, that you can have to get out of bed for every day. In terms of our organisation, we've got just over 6,000 colleagues in the organisation. So we're a big organisation, we're a national organisation, we're all over the UK, and we deliver blood and blood-based therapies across England, and we deliver organs and tissue transplantation services across the UK. And a few fascinating numbers that I looked up that I thought you might be interested in. So we deliver, everyone loves a number, right? We deliver 1.4 million units of red blood cells, 250,000 units of platelets, and 200,000 plasma components to 260 hospitals. So we're a big national organisation, and we deliver 4,000 organs to 29 UK transplant centres. So what makes us quite unique as an organisation is, so we're an arm's length body, organisation, special health authority, and we what sits underneath our services is a very sophisticated supply chain and logistics base of our organisation.
Yeah.
So it's a fascinating company to join. And like Giles said, I joined. I had a bit of a personal connection, actually. And
it's a calling for you, isn't it?
Sorry.
It's a bit of a calling for you.
Well, a bit of a calling. So I was quite happy in my last organisation, starting to think about having a look around for a different opportunity, but not desperately looking. And this kind of came along, popped up actually on my LinkedIn feed, and the organisation was starting on the journey of transforming their talent acquisition, which we'll talk about, I think, in a minute. But and I thought, oh, there's something there for me to get my teeth into. Sounds interesting. But also, I personally had a stem cell transplant about 13 years ago, and so with everything that goes alongside having that, I used many of our products. Many blood transfusions, many platelet transfusions, and then and a stem cell transplant. And I'm very well now. Touch wood, everything's okay. But actually, when this came up, I thought, you know what, this is a personal opportunity for me to try something different, try something in an organisation that I know I can make a difference in, and that's made a difference to me, and significantly. And so here I am.
Great. It's a super story as well. I love it. So yeah, we are here to talk about recruitment transformation. And although you've only been with NHSBT for just over a year and a half, you've got through a lot, and you've seen an awful lot of change. And that's not necessarily just been within recruitment. But could you paint a little bit of a picture in terms of the journey that the organisation's been on, and why NHSBT felt it necessary to go on that journey and make some changes?
Yeah, I think that we the way that we do our recruitment and the way that we've historically done our recruitment has been very transactional, very much a one-size-fits-all approach, or one-size-fits-most approach to how we manage our recruitment in the organisation. And the organisation is transforming at quite a pace. The market is in a very different place to where it has been pre-pandemic, and also before that as well. The market's moved on, and so there was a real need and a want to change some stuff, and to reinvent how we do our recruitment, how we attract talent, and how we really make a difference in how we do it and how we add value. And that was a piece of work that was supported from the board. It's within our strategy that we'll transform our recruitment. So it's a real kind of opportunity and a real ambition of the organisation to make some changes.
Great. Okay. So when you first came into the role, what you said that obviously it's quite reactive, fairly transactional. What did you find, and how did you identify where improvements could potentially be made and where the potential wins were?
I think it was our processes were good. They worked, but they were, like I said, they were quite rigid, and the organisation. So I went and spoke to the business, right? I went and talked to hiring managers. I went to talk to leaders in the organisation. I went and spoke with our trade union colleagues to try to understand some of the challenges, some of the opportunities that we had, and we really started then to pull together a bit of a plan as to what are the things that are going to make the biggest difference. And you can't do everything in 10 minutes, right? So you have to try and do things fairly systematically. So what I decided to do is we were going to focus the first sort of 12 to 18 months on just securing the foundations. And because there's in recruitment, there's so much great stuff you can do in recruitment, right? There's always a new bit of technology. There's always something new and shiny and exciting to go and try. But in my experience, if you don't have a solid foundation to go and apply that against, it never really works very well. You don't quite get the value out of it that you should. So it's really important to me that we spent the first kind of year and a bit just securing the foundations, looking at our technology, looking at our data, looking at our brand and how we present ourselves to the market, looking at building relationships with the organisation in a different way, and really focusing on how we put the candidate at the centre and the heart of everything that we do. So it's candidate first. Everything we do is candidate first. Everything we think about is candidate first, because in this market, that's where you win and lose. I think one of the key areas where you win and lose.
I think that's really important, because the environment in which we're operating, the economy, and certainly around candidate and attraction, that's changed hugely. And I know for you, obviously, there's various different strands of recruitment within NHSBT, and probably very similar to NHS Trust, is that there's a big part of that recruitment is for healthcare assistants, called donor carers, but also healthcare assistants within NHSBT. That's right, isn't it? So that's quite a high volume of recruitment for you.
Yeah, and actually, so the donor carers are the folk that go out onto our blood collection sessions, whether it's in a donor centre or out on a mobile team, that go around to the village halls and local community-based areas to collect blood. And interestingly, those roles are called donor carer. And when I joined, we looked at how we're attracting people. And we found out that nobody looks for a job called a donor carer because it doesn't exist anywhere else. So we did a bit of a dip test. We did some kind of A/B testing to say, let's look at how many applicants we get if we advertise as healthcare assistant blood donation versus in the same part of the country if we advertise as donor carer. And we tried a few different things, and all the data was starting to show us that we got more hits, more clicks, more traction if we changed the name that we advertised the role as. So we that's what we've done, the keywords that people search for. We all know in this day and age you have to be where candidates are popping the keywords in, and you have to make yourself relevant and make sure that your jobs are landing in front of the right people. And it's very kind of algorithm and keyword based in lots of different platforms, isn't it? So we changed that. So, but yeah, it's a big part of our recruitment. It's the same role that we recruit, the same profile of role every time. What's challenging about the role is that we can. It doesn't really matter what your background is. It doesn't really matter where you've worked before, so long as you've got basically we need people with great customer service skills, great customer care skills to make sure our donors come in, feel valued, have a positive experience, have a really valuable experience. So we need people that can do that. We need people that can follow instructions. We're highly regulated, so we need people that have got great attention to detail, that can follow instructions, that can work safely, etc., etc. People that are okay with sticking a needle in someone's arm and holding a warm bag of blood, and all the things that come along with that. And some people can't do that, and some people can. So and I've very much simplified it. But actually, when you look at who we could attract to do those jobs, it could be anyone, right? I could be trained to go and do that job. Giles could be trained to go and do that job. So one of our challenges with recruitment is how we differentiated candidates and how we can help hiring managers with shortlisting and all of that good stuff. So that's kind of what we're working on at the minute. We're working on how we simplify that process. We're looking at some further automations in the future to automate that process through, so that fundamentally we can be quicker, get better matched candidates through the process, and take some of the heavy lifting away from the hiring managers.
Absolutely. I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head in as much as in terms of that pool of potential talent that you might be looking to hire into NHSBT for healthcare assistants, probably the same as any other trust as well. You can take people from customer service experience or anything at all, but on that basis, you're then going to be competing against other employers and large employers as well. So it might be your Amazons, your Tesco's, your Morrisons, or all those types of employers as well. And I know that certainly one of the biggest challenges, and that's something that we're working with you on at the moment, is around the candidate experience, the length of the application form or the application experience as well. Because if you're competing against other employers that have very short application processes, quite high touch in terms of positive candidate experience, then you've got to be at least as good as them.
Right, exactly. And there are, let's not kid ourselves, we're not a big organisation ourselves as the NHS. But there are some things that we can speed up more than others. So what we're trying to do is to find the parts of the process that we can speed up and improve and increase the quality on. I've worked in other organisations before where you can have your interview and start the next day, and that's just not the case here because we have to go through our clearances and so the things that we have to be really thoughtful about are, like I said, what are the bits that we can impact and how do we do that in a way that candidates expect. Candidates expect different things these days. Candidates are used to shopping online, doing 1 or 2 clicks to do things, and there's a fine line, isn't there? We need to get enough information from candidates that's relevant, that we need, and that candidates are happy to give when they've got many other opportunities that could be of interest to them. And it's one of the big things is really how we position ourselves, how we talk about the role, the opportunity, the purpose of our organisation, and we want people that care about saving and improving people's lives, and we want people to feel an affinity to that and understand what that means. And are we where we are going to end up on that journey around our branding? Not yet, but we're kind of well on our way towards it, because all of those things, there's not one lever that you can pull, in my view, that kind of you can say, right, we've pulled that lever, it's done, everything's lovely. You have to kind of do all the different elements
around attraction and employer branding, and almost making sure you engage with people, but almost engaging the right people. What are you doing around that? What plans have you got? What have you implemented, and what's coming down the pipe?
Yeah, so we've done a few things. One of the early things that we did was a piece of work around our EVP. And so we work with an organisation that's helped us to create and define what our EVP is. So why do people want to join NHSBT? Why do they stay? So we did that whole piece. We did focus groups. We talked to new starters. We talked to people that have been here for years. Looked at all that information, kind of filtered it down to create an EVP, and then we've kind of turned that into a new brand, which we're starting to roll out, and that will start to come out more soon, with a new kind of career site as well that we're doing. But that's kind of a branding and positioning perspective, right? From a tactical perspective, we traditionally always advertised on NHS jobs, and we still do, and we always will. But actually, if we go back to the conversation we were just having, where we're trying to attract people that could work in multiple industries, unless you think about the NHS as a place that you want to work, the chances of ending up on the NHS jobs website, I don't think is maybe as high. So if you pop in, customer facing roles in Liverpool, for example, you'll get up, Google will serve you up some jobs. Indeed will serve you up jobs. Platforms will serve you up different jobs. And NHS jobs is there, and so they've both got their place in. So what we're starting to do is we're starting to try to segment out where candidates are looking for roles, applying for roles from, where we're successfully hiring from, And where we've now got better data, we're using the Jobtrain platform, we're able to analyse what's working for us and what's not working. And when we're trying new attraction channels, whether they're going to deliver what we need them to deliver or not. And so we're kind of trying to be a bit more deliberate and a bit more data driven about how we go and attract candidates to our organisation.
Yeah, and in terms of that candidate experience, I know this can be almost like a second wave, because I guess for those that are familiar with the NHS Jobs platform, there's quite a lengthy application form behind that. And that creates a challenge in terms of trying to compete with those people that are presenting a really simple mobile interface, or in fact, in some cases, candidates can apply from Indeed to an employer and never even arrive on the employer's website. They just use their profile. And that's something that we'll be working towards in the autumn. But there is an opportunity to reduce the length of the application form. I know that is something that is coming, and I think we'll probably come on to talk about change in a short while, because I know that sometimes making those changes within an organisation can be sometimes a challenge, but the impact can be pretty significant in terms of being able to screen candidates more effectively, but also give them a better experience that takes a lot less time to complete, and therefore have a lot more completed but relevant applications at the end of it.
Yeah, exactly. It's quality over quantity, isn't it? But you kind of need a bit of both. And I think you have to take different strategies to volume recruitment to non-volume recruitment, and any sort of change like that. So basically, what we're focusing on is what's the information that we need, when do we need it, and do we need that from everybody? And so that's kind of the basis that we're trying to kind of redesign and rethink how we get candidates to give us the information that we need in a way that we can fairly and equitably review candidates and shortlist. And we're working really hard around how we are intentionally inclusive in how we do that. So really being thoughtful about what are some of the interventions that we can put in that make sure that we level the playing field for candidates, not only when they're applying, but all the way through the process. And you're right, there's change is always a bit of a journey with everybody in an organisation, isn't it? But for me, I think the key thing is to bring your stakeholders along with you. Talk about the pain points.
Yeah.
And understand and bring them with you.
I remember part of the process that you described to me was to help people to understand and get on board with that change, especially in terms of the candidate experience, was actually shining a light on who NHSBT are competing against for healthcare assistance, and then sort of showing, almost providing a bit more of an external market lens.
Yeah, we were very understandably, right. We were quite internally focused, and I've spent with the team quite a bit of time together looking at the market, looking at the data, and sort of translating where we sit in the market against what's happening in the bigger picture, right? The unemployment rates are, I don't know if they still are, but certainly a few months ago, they were at their lowest level for something like 50 years, weren't they? So really low unemployment rates. One and a bit unemployed people per vacancy in the UK. It's really, really competitive. We don't have people queuing at the door. No organisation has people queuing at the door anymore. And so I spent quite a bit of time sort of talking about the market and talking about what's happening in the labour market, talking about some of those big trends that are happening, talking about the what's happened in this post-pandemic hiring boom that we've all been recruiting within, when everybody stopped and then everyone started again, and then it's just been high and it's been high ever since. And so to bring that external view in with our internal stakeholders, both within HR and recruitment, but also within the wider business, has been really, I think, important in helping people to just start to think differently and understand why we need to do some stuff differently, and what some of the challenges might be if we don't.
Yeah. So I guess the key takeaway from that bit is essentially using data more effectively, whether that's internal data or external data, to tell a bit of a story. And then I guess from that, as a consequence, create some actionable insights. This is what we need to be aware of what's going outside of our organisation, these potential challenges within our organisation, whether it's, time taken to apply, or the concern about whether the way in which we're attracting candidates or managing candidates through the process is equitable or inclusive. And that covers a whole range of things, even down to, is it possible to apply on a mobile phone for somebody that hasn't got access to a PC, a laptop, a tablet, those types of things. There's so many things to consider in there, but I know that's certainly been a journey you've been on.
Yeah, it hasn't. And sorry, I was going to say that, we now understand and can see better how many candidates are starting their journeys on mobile phones. It's, I can't remember the percentage off the top of my head, but that we're able to understand all of that so much better now. And we're also able to understand and analyse the conversion rates through the funnel. So, on the volume roles, how many candidates do you need in the top of the funnel to equal one offer? Now we're better able to understand that and analyse that data, we can then make some more strategic decisions about what we do and what interventions we need to make sure that our candidate funnel and our filtering through the funnel is as efficient as it can be and as fast as it can be.
Okay, we're jumping around a little bit. I'm okay with that. I'm interested to understand.
Keep you on your toes, Giles.
No, it's all right. I'm thinking about reporting and metrics and things. How did you start to paint a picture, perhaps without access to an awful lot of data, in terms of these are the potential quick wins that I see when you inherited the existing structure and the existing way of doing things? And then obviously you've gone through the process of implementing recruitment technologies to support your new process and your new team structure. What reporting have you got in place now, and for who, and how does that work?
Yeah, we when I joined, don't get me wrong, we had data, but it wasn't very easy to get very often. So when I joined, we kind of got the data that we could get and use that, because you can find some themes, and our initial insights were around volume and capacity, and really trying to understand where some of the pressures were coming from in terms of volume and capacity, and we're able to make some decisions on that. But we've built some new dashboards, and so we've been using the data from Jobtrain for a little while, but we've built some dashboards that we're actually rolling out those in the coming weeks into the organisation. So we've actually restructured our recruitment team at the same time, and now we've got those folk in place. This is where we're rolling out our changes in terms of this is how we add value. Here's the data. These are the dashboards that we produce each month, and the data that we really work on. There's data looking back over our shoulder. So what's our performance data? What's happening as part of the business? How we've been performing? What's our time to hire? etc. We've really been looking also at our ED&I data. So really able to delve into our understanding our ED&I data differently, and then also looking at our operational data for our team, so helping our recruiters and the people in our recruitment team to really understand where we're at, where we're up to, what are the blockages, where are any hold-ups, etc. So we chunked it out into 3 initial areas for using the data to start with.
So it's almost like leadership and exec, ED&I, and operational reporting as well.
Yeah.
And is there a plan? I think is there a plan to introduce some form of KPIs within that as well? Do they form part of that reporting suite, and how do they work for you? How do they help you and support and guide you?
Yeah. We've got some basic KPIs, and what we did last year is within our volume roles for our healthcare assistants, we kind of reset our KPIs and SLAs. So we badge them up as SLAs because we all know, right, that recruitment isn't delivered wholly by the recruitment team. Recruitment's delivered in absolute partnership with the organisation, and we all have our part to play. So what we wanted to do, and we started off with, like I say, with our volume roles, is to start to understand and analyse and set some targets for how quickly we turn things around. So that's how quickly our team turn things around within the process, and it's how quickly we want the hiring managers to turn things around. So we put some targets and we agreed some targets with that part of the organisation, and we then started to measure them. And they were delivered really by having a different conversation at the start of the process. To really agree with the hiring manager. That first conversation with any hiring manager, in my opinion, is the most important success point in any recruitment process. Doesn't matter whether it's volume or exec level. That piece where you agree, this is what we're going to do, this is the approach we're going to take, let's have a look at the timeline, and agreeing the timeline together at that point is really critical, because if you don't do that, it's you can end up really slipping. And then if you have that conversation within the SLA points that we agreed for those volume roles, we were able to, out of the first chunk of our process, kind of take, I think it's 10 or 11 days out. So it all starts to add up, and that was really just through planning differently, thinking differently, and then being able to measure it. And then the plan is that we then sort of kick forward to take to be more efficient.
So this is interesting. I was at a recruitment event last week, taking part in some roundtable discussions with a whole wide range of employers, different sizes, different sectors and things. And the almost perennial discussion about hiring managers came up as part of that discussion. And, sometimes it's seen as the recruitment team's responsibility to handle recruitment, not necessarily the hiring managers. So I was certainly suggesting throwing in my two penneth in terms of a couple of ways in which you get hiring managers more engaged, more understanding, and perhaps more appreciative of the process, but all the effort that goes into even delivering candidates, and the importance of doing that quickly, effectively, and going back to your point, putting the candidate at the heart of the recruitment process. What tips have you got specifically? How have you overcome any resistance to either buying into the process or committing to the time that's required, or to the SLAs that you're striving to achieve?
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. It's like you said, it's the perennial problem, isn't it?
Just to moan about hiring managers, and I think quite rightly, but I think as recruiters we also have we're in a position we should be making it really clear what that process looks like and exactly how much effort's going into it to produce that shortlist, rather than hiring managers.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I say, it's that initial conversation is the key piece, but it's kind of the education and the journey around it. And I think that one of the key things that we are trying to change is because we have to help ourselves, right? And in helping ourselves, we help the organisation. So if we are looking for, if you sit down with a hiring manager and we're looking for something that we probably know doesn't really exist in the market, there's that's a conversation to have at that point. So where we're trying to add more value and more strategic value into what we do. So instead of having a purely transactional process where we take orders, process order and deliver order, we want to be able to say, look, this is your order, this is what you're asking for, let's just have a look at this before we go head first into it. Let's just take a breath together, let's have a look at this, let's have a look at the market, do it, especially for the more niche roles, right? Who's recruiting in this space already? Do we know who our competitors are? Where are these people already working? Which of these roles are the roles that are really going to be quite painful for us if someone leaves, and we is there succession in place or not for those roles? And so those sorts of conversations that we're trying to drive further up the process, to have that conversation and have it as a more of a, and you have to build trust to do that, right? And you have data to do that, and to be able to enable your recruiters to feel comfortable and confident to have some of those, because it can be hard conversations, right?
Absolutely.
You know, and then to be able to kind of say, and data helps you, right? Because you could say, well, I know this is going to be a hard role to fill because I've worked in recruitment for X number of years, and I just know that this is going to be really difficult to fill. If you've got the data to back that up, to say, well, look, this is who's recruiting at the minute, this is where in the country they are, this, you know, that sort of stuff.
Moves from being an opinion.
Yeah, exactly. It must be a more rounded conversation, and that's when you then build up that partnership with your hiring managers better. So
yeah, for sure. So you started to touch on something that I was really keen to delve into, and that is, this webinar, this discussion is talking about a recruitment transformation journey, and you started off by saying what you arrived at was, and it's quite common, it's almost like a transactional recruitment. Can you define for you what is the difference between transactional recruitment and what you have sought to build in terms of people, structure, process to go from transactional recruitment or admin-led recruitment to a talent acquisition team? Or what are the different moving parts of that? How have you personally sought to create that and structure it, and what does it look like today?
Yeah, I think this has been one of the foundational bits that we've worked on, which I didn't mention earlier on. But if you know, we needed to change how we structured our team to be able to deliver the changes that we want to make. And you know, with a transactional administrative process, your opportunity to be able to challenge back, add value, bring an expert view to the table is kind of, it's so limited.
Yeah.
And you end up being as reactive. You just end up being reactive the whole time. So you know, you end up with a pile of vacancies coming to you that you didn't know were coming. So you couldn't plan for it. So you then get a bottleneck in your process, and then you know it's challenging, and that'll always happen, right? At different points, but we want to try and minimise those points. And what we wanted to do was to get to a bit more of a strategic value-adding approach. And so we really took a look at what we needed in the team to be able to deliver that. And so we've got a structure now which has kind of got 3 segments within it. So within the operational part of what we do, so we're the people that do in the operations team. So we go and deliver, we face off to the business, we manage the vacancies, we do our end-to-end recruitment, we roll our sleeves up. But within that operations team, we've kind of segmented into 2. We've got a team that manage our volume vacancies and our kind of easier to fill vacancies. And
so
we've got
assistants, admin roles, those types of, yeah,
but not exclusively, but
right.
But mainly. And then we've got another part of our operations team which manage the more difficult to fill niche roles, more senior roles, but also work as we've got some senior recruiters that work as a business partner to the organisation. So we've kind of allocated parts of the organisation for them to partner with, and really go and work with their senior leadership teams, work with our colleagues in HR who do the people planning, the succession planning, the talent planning, to understand more about what's happening, why it's happening, what's coming down the line, what changes are happening in that part of the organisation. Is there any growth coming, so that we can then plan and grow? We can then understand what some of the challenges are. So if we need to think about how we take some different attraction strategies, present ourselves to the market in a different way, because we know that there's some recruitment going to be happening in a certain area of the organisation soon. So that enables us just to be on the front foot a bit more. It also enables us to be able to like I was saying, have some of these different conversations with hiring managers. So that part of our team are focused more on those more niche, more senior requirements, but also I was saying we've lined them up against kind of directorates in a sort of vertical way, but we've also kind of put in some horizontal, I call them, accountabilities in. So we've got roles that sit in different parts of our organisation.
Yep.
In different directorates, but they're kind of the same types of roles. So data analysts, project managers, nursing roles, scientific roles, they can sit across multiple directorates. What we want to be able to do is to be able to kind of bring together a more joined up approach to how we go and talk to the market, engage with the market for those types of roles, make sure we're not tripping over ourselves in the market, make sure that we're building talent pools in the right way, so that if we have a vacancy that comes up for a nursing role in one part of the organisation or the other part of the organisation, you know, we can align, making sure that we're presenting ourselves as one organisation to the outside world for those roles. Because, you know, if you're a project manager, you know, you've got project management skill, and we're kind of looking for the same thing whether you're in this directorate or this directorate, and we need to just put some alignment in. So we've started to really think differently about that within our operations team. And then we've put in a section of our team which is around our recruitment strategy. So we've got a recruitment strategy manager in place, and they look after a small team that focuses purely on brand and attraction, social media, career site, how we go to market, building campaigns for the ops team to go and deliver against. They also look after our governance, so our UK visa and immigration, and all of our governance audit, that kind of stuff, and also our systems. So our systems, our process, our data. And why I put them as separate from our operations team is that, you know, like I said, I've worked in recruitment for a while. You know, the operation always pulls the hardest. So if you're in an operational role and you're trying to do big scale transformation, there's always a hiring manager to help. There's always there's always something happening. There's always a pressure that you need to go and prioritize within the operation, because that's what keeps the organization running and is critical. So we deliberately segmented out a bit of the team and some resource to really focus on redesigning and driving forward the changes that we want to make. So that's kind of how we've structured ourselves from being a transactional kind of admin-based team to the future.
So that's a pretty fundamental change in terms of structure, approach, having somebody responsible for recruitment strategy, positioning yourselves in such a way that you can start to influence senior leadership, and using data to better inform hiring managers, become more proactive and far less reactive, seen as true business partners. So that process it's taken some time, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has. You know, it's a big change, and so you know, and it's a really important change to get right. So you know, it's we've gone through all the process, all the design, all the sign-offs and everything, and we've got the new structure in place now. We've got folks in the new roles in the team, we're a really exciting time now.
So what's next for you? Team structure's in place. I think everybody's settled into their new roles. You know, what happens next? I know you've got tech in place to support that process to a degree, albeit I think you've got a new career site coming that will work with the Jobtrain platform that you're using. You've got the foundations of reporting split into exec level leadership reporting, ED&I, and then operational KPIs and things. And I think you've also got some elements of reporting that will help to inform you as to whether you've got the right candidate flow coming in order to fill vacancies, that kind of stuff. But what happens next?
So yeah, you're right. So we've done our foundational work, like you say, team are in place. It's really then we've got a new career site coming, like you say, that'll be fully integrated into Jobtrain. So from a candidate's perspective, you know, if they type in project manager, for example, given that we were just chatting about that, you know, the intention is that they will see content related to project manager and then the jobs in the same search.
Yeah.
So, you know, pretty fundamental stuff, I think, for candidates. So new career site's really exciting. We really want to focus on, particularly for our frontline roles, helping people to understand what the role is all about. Really, excuse me, how we help people to have a realistic understanding of what the job is before they apply. The best form of selection is self-selection, I think, or one of the best forms of selection. Help people to understand, help candidates to understand better. You know, we don't want to waste candidates' time. You know, I want candidates to understand what they're coming to, help them to understand and then be successful in their application process. You know, really looking at, one of the things that we will be looking at is really how we make our selection decisions. So, you know, once we've got candidates in and through, what then? So, you know, how do we, what does that process look like? What tools do we use? How do we help hiring managers through that process? So we'll be looking at that. And then really, you know, and all of this is with the view around being intentionally inclusive in everything that we do. Leveling the playing field, addressing, you know, any inequalities. And then really looking at automation. So we talked a bit about automation, didn't we? And looking at because you can't automate your whole process and you'd never want to automate your whole process, but the bits that you can and where it makes sense to, we should be. So we're really going to be having a look at that. And then also as well, one of the things that we're kind of having a look at the minute is AI. And so the impact that AI is having and will have on candidates and how candidates apply for roles. And before you even get to what's available to us as an employer, but, you know, AI is quite impactful, I think, at the minute. So lots going on.
Great. Got a couple of questions. First of all, from Zoe. Zoe, thanks for your question. Can I ask how many people are in the overall recruitment team, including your recruitment strategy team? In terms of that, who sits there, how many people have you got?
Yeah, we've got about 20 in the team.
Okay, and that's for your organisation's about 6,000 employees.
Yeah, just over 6,000. Yeah.
Okay, that's great. So does that help? Got a question from Stephanie here. Stephanie, thanks for your question. 90% of NHS organisations use Track as their ATS. What system do you use? You're right, Stephanie, that it's either NHS Jobs, which has some candidate management component to it, or it's Track.
Yeah, we use Jobtrain.
Yeah, so Stephanie, to help you a little bit, and obviously I'm a little bit loaded here. So Jobtrain, we provide ATS, as we have done for over 20 years now. So we've been supporting the whole of NHS Scotland, so that's all 22 boards with our applicant tracking system for about 4 years now. And we now offer an ATS for England too. So we've been working with NHS Blood now for about 18 months. We're working with NHS Property Services. We're now starting to engage with trusts as well. So critically, I think one of the reasons why to date Track has been successful in that it's integrated into both NHS Jobs and ESR. We have integrated into NHS Jobs 3 so that you can post jobs directly from our platform into NHS Jobs. And then finally, in terms of ESR, we've integrated into ESR as well, so that in terms of both creating new positions within our applicant tracking system and posting new hires into ESR, both those elements are taken care of. So I think perhaps within the NHS, people aren't aware that there are alternatives to Track. And the answer to that is there absolutely are. We're starting to see a shift from people who perhaps are looking for something a little bit more flexible, that thinks about wider recruitment, perhaps looks at reporting in a bit more detail, those types of things. So yeah, there are alternatives out there. Thank you very much for your questions. If anybody else has any questions, then do feel free to fire them off. Just looking a little bit at the poll that we've got as well. Oops. What are the main challenges here? Looking through. Using data for storytelling, creating insights and a business case for change. That's I've got about a third of the votes, Ruth. Probably no surprise there. I think hopefully we've covered that off for people, but if you have any more questions around that, whether it's business change, whether it's a change in technology. I think between us, we could probably both help you with that. At Jobtrain, we've written some guides, both in terms of how to implement tech successfully, but also how to go out and buy tech, including creating business cases and that kind of thing. Also choosing the right tech, that's also got votes as well in terms of going out. How do you go and buy that with confidence? Again, we'd be more than happy to help with that. We've actually written a guide on that. So if any of you would like a copy of that, then do please get in touch with us. I'm happy to share that with you. I think we've got any more questions down here. Quick look. Oh, Zoe's just saying the session's been really helpful. So I think, Ruth, is there anything else that you feel we should cover as we start to wrap this session up? And we hope it's been of value for everybody here. And thanks for your questions as well.
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. I think that I think that well, you might say that I would say this. I think recruitment is one of the most exciting places to be. And you know, there's so much opportunity in any organisation. It doesn't matter what organisation you work in. There's always an opportunity in recruitment. You know, we really have a it's really, it's a fundamental part, isn't it, of any organisation, is how you attract your colleagues and how you bring them in and what experience you give, and how you can do that really, really well. It's a something I feel quite passionately about. Don't know if you can tell.
That's why we're here. I've worked in recruitment now for over 20 years, and I absolutely love what I do, and we collectively do here for that very reason. Helping to grow organisations, create really positive cultures, and have impact is why we get out of bed in the morning. But sometimes it's quite nice for people to know that you're not alone, and perhaps in terms of some of the challenges that we're facing, and that's why we want to run a few more of these sessions. So if any of you here would like to join us for more of those, and we'd be delighted to. A quick comment from Stephanie here, does lead it out for you, Ruth. We're really trying to be innovative within the realms of safe recruitment. One of the biggest challenges culturally are the hiring managers. How have you got around some of those challenges about resistance to change and creating capacity to change when the workload doesn't always allow us to stop and think?
Great question. Yeah, it's a tough one, isn't it? It's like I was saying, show me a recruitment team that's not busy and run off their feet, right? So there's it's always, there's so much work to do. There's so much to deliver. There's so many conflicting priorities in any organisation that you work in recruitment, and I think that it's there's no magic wand, but it's every interaction that we have with hiring managers is looking for the opportunity within those interactions, whether that's the telephone calls, face-to-face conversations, the follow-up emails, to help them to understand, look at things a bit differently. Like I said, I think that time spent, my own view is that time spent, like I said, at the very, very beginning of every single vacancy is time well spent, because if you don't get it right at that point, you then go all the way through, don't fill a vacancy, have to go back, and it's going through the same over and over again. So if I could give any advice, it would be to really look at what that process at the very, very beginning of every single vacancy looks like, and are there any things you can do around that to help move things along differently, keep pace in the process, be efficient, and that's always my top tip.
Yeah, there's a couple of elements in there, Stephanie, just for questions probably posed to Ruth, but firstly around hiring managers, we've got some information we send. I've got a bit of a guide actually in terms of creating productive partnerships with hiring managers for one. And obviously we're all collectively, certainly the NHS, recruiting in a regulated environment. It's really important to do that in a safe way, but with as much speed and efficiency as possible. Certainly there are ways in which you can do that. We work really hard within Jobtrain. We've got a whole separate onboarding module that helps you to track every single element of compliance really quickly. I think for our clients within CQC regulated hiring, I think they're overall success has been, I think, in like 24 hours from making an offer to somebody to having them go through compliance checks, including referencing to them being essentially onboarded. That's outside of DBS. So there were lots of ways in which you can introduce efficiencies within the processes that take quite a lot of admin. To Ruth's point, recruitment is quite an admin heavy process, but those processes do need to be followed for a reason. But there are ways in which you can use technology to speed up and reduce some of the admin, both from a candidate perspective, from a new hires perspective, but also hiring managers and recruiters as well. I've got one last question as well from Vicky. Ruth, do you accept CVs or do you still require everybody to fill in an application form?
We require everyone to fill in an application. What we're doing though is looking at, like we said, what we put on the application and how can we change that. Because I think that, the way that we have to screen candidates, the way that we have to make sure that we, like we say, we're doing that really fairly and equitably. That's why we ask candidates to complete an online application form.
Yeah, I mean, Vicky, there are certainly ways in which you can reduce the amount of time taken to complete an application form. You can split that into 2 stages, or actually you can use, I know it's something that I think you're looking into, Ruth, in terms of how to use effective screening questions, either as a self-selection exercise or even just as a selection exercise, because there'll be certain things that you require for, let's say, healthcare assistant type roles, and then having a relevant initial stage of the application form. And then for all the compliance information, you might need to capture things like full employment history, including gaps, references, that kind of stuff. You can always ask for that as a second stage application. And then you're not asking a candidate to complete an awful lot of information that perhaps isn't required to do an initial assessment before they're taken forward for interview. So that there are ways in which you can overcome that for sure. Great. That brings us very neatly almost to the top of the hour. So Ruth, thank you so much for your time this morning. We really appreciate it. Thank you to everybody that's joined us. We really hope you got value from this morning's session, and there will be both, we'll do a bit of write-up, a bit of follow-up to this session. So if you've got people you think might get some value from it, we'll do that. A recording of the session as well will be available too. And like I said, we will be running more sessions. I think the next NHS specific one will be in November. So feel free to follow us on LinkedIn, or we'll be in touch with you to inform you about those future sessions. But thank you very much for your time, and we hope you have a great week.